Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leyland brothers. Whatever it is that you want to see, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. No matter whatever that happens to be, ask the Leyland brothers. Come on, me in it and join in the fun. Travel all over Australia.
This week we travelled to Western New South Wales, to Broken Hill, to have a look at an unusual man, a well-known artist, Pro Hart. He lives in the bush, and the bush is what he paints.
And as you know, this program is made up out of your requests, and it seems that quite a lot of you would like to see Ayers Rock. We're going to show the significance of Ayers Rock to the Aborigines, and the wildlife that lives around the rock, and why is it that so many people go all the way out there just to climb the rock.
We've arrived at the mining town of Broken Hill in New South Wales to see a man whose name is known all over the world, at least to those interested in art. His name is Pro Hart, and we've come to film his story and him at work in answer to a letter from Mr. Dennis Dempsey of Shortland, New South Wales, who writes to say that in his term as a police officer at Broken Hill, he saw a lot of Pro Hart's work and suggests that the lifestyle of the artist who put Broken Hill on the map would be interesting to viewers of Ask the Leyland Brothers. We find Pro busy hanging his private collection of over $500,000 worth of paintings in preparation for his new gallery opening.
Where did you get the name Pro from?
It goes back to dim dark ages, actually, like my early life. I used to fiddle around with explosives, design machine guns, and in the at school I was sort of called Professor, and then it sort of came from there to Pro. They'd say, "How you going, Prof?" And then after a while, people would forget about that, and they'd say Pro was a bit shorter than Prof, and they'd say, "How you going, Pro?" And that's how it stuck. I think I can't remember really.
And you've carried it on to your paintings and that.
Well, originally, before I ever started selling paintings, I used to sign them Pro because it's better than signing Kevin. It's easier.
And how old were you when you started to paint?
7 was the age we started school. And that's when I started to paint, because I learnt from correspondence school, it was Where Station, and when I was asked to do a composition or something in the school work, it's a long while ago to remember, but I used to find it easier to illustrate on the side of the page rather than write, and the school teachers used to write back and say that they thought this was a good idea and they used to encourage it, and I think I had my first painting hanging in a gallery when I was 8.
I noticed you paint a lot of outback scenes. Do you like this type?
Well, I lived in the Outback, but if I want a background for a painting with people in it, I go out back locally and study it. And usually around here, any country that suits any particular thing, like a picnic, I can go out back anywhere here and I can find what I'm looking for. And I use motorcycle or a jeep or something, depending on the weather.
On his field trips, Pro rarely travels further than 20 kilometres from Broken Hill to find all the outback landscapes he needs. He once worked in the mines at Broken Hill, and gradually his skill and reputation as an artist grew until he could make it full-time employment. His paintings command large sums these days, but when talking to Pro, he reveals that for all his success, he doesn't have such a lot of money. He lives and breathes nothing but art, and has therefore sunk most of his money into paintings by other artists. His private collection has built up over the years, and now will be on public display at his new gallery attached to his house. Names like Drysdale and Nolan are commonplace on the walls of Pro's galleries, of course along with many of his own works. He loves to play the organ, and is one of the best in the country. This particular organ was originally installed in the Opera House in Sydney and was used for the opening. Pro doesn't pretend to be a great exponent of the organ, but his habit of bursting into a music session at any hour of the day or night and of sending off homemade rockets into the night sky has given him something of an eccentric reputation with some of the locals, though most seem proud of their successful artist of the bush. Pro is a strongly religious man and frequently plays hymns on the organ for his family. But on special nights, like tonight when the gallery is to be officially open to the public, Pro is the least conspicuous person at the huge gathering.
I'm expected to clear the gallery open. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and now...
Well, Pro, it looks as though you're going to have a pretty successful sort of a gallery with the opening like this.
It's a good opening. It's coming off very well.
Yeah, pretty good crowd.
I'm quite happy with it. Yeah.
One of the things that strikes me, I've seen you working a lot lately, and you know how hard it is to squeeze time in, all the things you seem to do. How do you find time? I mean, must be people chasing you all the time.
Well, what I do, I disappear. If someone turns up, I don't, you know, I can observe the front gate from where I paint, and if I see a briefcase or somebody looks like business, I just hop on the motorbike and disappear.
Pro's highly tuned electric start motorcycle is an imported Italian racing machine and serves him well as an escape vehicle to reach one of his several other studios scattered throughout Broken Hill. In these quiet spots, unobserved and isolated, he can work at the thing he loves most, painting. During the course of our filming, he tells me that he believes all his art is coming directly from God. He says it's just something inside which he must get out, and he can now put it down on canvas much faster than ever before. Most of his paintings are typical outback situations, like this one of yabby fishermen around an inland billabong. Some of his earlier work is closely associated with his earlier experiences in the mines. But whatever the source of his inspiration, there is no denying the success that has come to Pro Hart, a humble miner from Broken Hill whose paintings are commanding large sums the world over, and whose lifestyle is certainly as colourful as the western sun setting over Broken Hill.
Of all the thousands of letters we received, we have an overwhelming number asking for one particular subject. Here, we've got over 200 letters asking to see Ayers Rock. Obviously, we can't mention all the names now, so we'll just take the one off the top. David Teakle of St Ignatius College in Norwood, South Australia, would like to see the changing colours of Ayers Rock and also its size in comparison to a man. The other letters are similar, all asking to see about various aspects of the rock. We're at the Ayers Rock Mount Olga National Park to try and answer some of these letters.
Ayers Rock was placed under the administration of the Northern Territory Reserves Board in 1958. The first road to the rock was graded 10 years earlier. Until then, a camel was needed to make the long journey to this remarkable feature. A breathtaking sight, whether it be your first or 100th visit.
In 1872, explorer Ernest Giles was the first white man to see Ayers Rock, but he didn't actually reach the rock. It wasn't until 1873 that W.C. Goss, on an expedition for the South Australian government, reached this spot here and reputedly blazed this bloodwood tree. He named the rock Ayers Rock after Sir Henry Ayers, the then Premier of South Australia.
Long before the white men came and named Ayers Rock, the first Australians, the Aborigines, were here. The rock was theirs. It played an important role in their lives.
For those people who'd like to know the significance of Ayers Rock to the Aborigines, we've asked Derek Roth, the senior ranger.
Well, Ayers Rock, Michael, is very, very significant to the Aborigines, and it's continuing significance. As you can see here, we've got an area of particular high significance to the Aboriginals, people of the Yankunytjatjara tribe and the Pitjantjatjara tribe, and this area here is of particular significance to the old men. It's part of the ritual, the continuing ritual of their life as their involvement with the religious form of their life grows. And here we've got an area that, at the request of the Aboriginal people, we have closed off so that no uninitiated person may enter, and of course this naturally means all the tourists that come here, and it's been very, very well accepted indeed by the tourists that does come. We're very delighted actually with the reaction of the visiting public.
And the rock itself, what significance has that got to the Aborigines?
Every portion of the rock has got a significance. It's true to say that every crack, every cave, every watermark on the rock has got a significance, and they all come back to the activities of the Dreamtime creators. Around the rock you've got all these ancestors that created the different portions of the rock, and the main character of the whole is the hare wallaby, who created the ritual of the rock. Now, around and about the place we have the Earth Mother, of course, who is the creative being of all the world, naturally enough, and of everything in it. And the story is basically that the Aborigines of this area believe that when the Earth was created, it was created flat and featureless. And as the Earth Mother began to dance the first fertility dance, the perspiration falling from her body upon hitting the soil formed into a fruit that is still the main ritual food of the Aborigines today. And from these fruits arose the ancestors of man himself. And their activities as they moved around this flat and featureless world laid down, you may say, a blueprint, a plan or a pattern of the things that were to come. And at the end of the Dreamtime period, when the end was signalled by, in this area, Loonba, the redback kingfisher, all the ancestors either returned to their place of origin or were transposed into rocks or trees or what have you. And as they disappeared, as it were, from the face of the earth, then arose the hills, the mountains, the rivers, the lakes, the streams, and of course, Uluru, the rock. All absolutely indisputable evidence to the Aborigines of the truth of the Dreamtime stories.
For those interested in the Aboriginal mythology, a park ranger conducts a guided tour for visitors each morning.
Morning everyone, my name's Ian. So we'll just stop here for a short while and we'll move into the cave where we'll point out a few paintings there. I'll explain a bit of mythology here in this cave. We'll move on to another cave a bit further around where I'll explain a bit of the history and the geology. And as you can see here, there's paintings on top of paintings in here. And it's pretty hard to pick out any main one. And they seem to think that most of these paintings are a bit like a blackboard. The Aboriginals have painted something when they've wanted to explain something at the time. There's this long white pole that extends almost down to the ground. This is a painting of the Nultawatta pole. The Nultawatta is a digging stick of the Aboriginal people. It's a stick about 3 foot long or so, which they use for digging up the grounds and looking for lizards or whatever they want to dig up. The next one is this one with the yellow ochre and the tassels down in front. For what we've been told, this is what women wear when they're pregnant. It's a support for the pregnancy of women. And these tassels down here are made out of human hair and animal fur, which they spin together to make a very strong rope, which they use for lots of different reasons, either tassels like this, or as a rope itself, or as a headband which the initiated men wear.
Local flora is another subject covered by the ranger.
It's quite a beautiful flower. Most people know the common name, the desert grevillea. It's one of the 3 in the park. You may see another one growing when you go out to sunset. It's got the long conical shaped flower. That's known as the spider grevillea, or the Grevillea areostakia.
At Kunju Gorge, Ian explains the mythology of its formation. A Dreamtime boomerang maker named Linga from Mount Connor was responsible.
He made this boomerang and he threw it to try it out. And this is where it landed, round here. So as he didn't want to lose it, he came here and started looking for it. And he started digging around the sand dune looking for his boomerang. He didn't find it, so he got the help of his friend Metalunga, a sleepy lizard. Between the two of them, they nearly tore this sand dune apart. That's what's caused this gorge in here today, where they dug all the sand out, looking for his boomerang. And this crack, it extends from the top of the cave and goes right up. This is where the Nulta water pole is believed to be carved out of the rock in the Dreamtime.
The Nulta water pole is a formation on the rock that is commonly known to the tourists as a kangaroo's tail. The group moves around the base of the rock as the ranger explains some of the uses of the caves.
Up in that crevice, they kept quite sacred and secret called picture boards and chiringa stones, which are boards and stones that are highly polished, and they have certain designs inscribed on them that they tell the whole mythology of the Mala totem. And they were kept up there until about the early 30s or so. And then Wati Olaranya, which means man of the rock, he's a man in his late 60s now, he took them away for their own safety because people started coming here in the 30s, and he became quite concerned for their safety. So now he's hidden them elsewhere where we'll probably never find out, which is probably a good thing in one way, but a pity in another. At least he's still concerned for their safety.
In a moment, more aspects of Ayers Rock.
A lot of people ask to see the changing colours of Ayers Rock. Well, as you can see, it depends entirely on the weather, and even in a black mood like this, it's very spectacular.
At different times of the day, the rock takes on a variety of hues. During a thunderstorm, it looks almost black. The most dramatic colour changes are at sunset and sunrise. The early morning sun accentuates a weathered surface. Ayers Rock is not what it appears, an unattached rock sitting on the desert floor. It is in fact the peak of a large rock mass, the bulk of which is covered by the surrounding desert sands. Ayers Rock is a conglomerate called arkose, most of which is sandstone. Upheaval in the Earth's surface millions of years ago tipped the rock on end, causing the strata bands to be vertical instead of horizontal as they were formed.
The park has quite a variety of wildlife, but not much of it's seen during the heat of the day because kangaroos and emus are in the shade of the trees. The other wildlife, such as small marsupial mice and lizards, are often living underground. And if they're not underground, they're very well camouflaged, such as this little mountain devil on the log here. He changes his colour to suit the background. It's very difficult to see no matter where he sits, even if he's on the sand or on a rock or in a piece of grass. It's completely harmless, and they live on small ants.
He can eat 1,000 or more ants at a single meal. The mountain devil's scientific name sums up his appearance: Moloch horridus. When he moves, it is almost as if he is a clockwork toy, but when stationary, he appears to be dead. A beautiful example of desert camouflage. Another good example of camouflage is a desert blue-tongued lizard. This skink in various colourings is found over most of Australia, blending into its particular habitat. They possess powerful jaws and should be handled with care, as they can be very difficult to remove from an unwary finger. Equally well camouflaged, but more obvious because of their size, the dingoes around the rock are often sighted. They're not shot at in the park, and therefore they often come quite close to habitation, looking for leftovers from the motel kitchens. The dingo is believed to have been introduced to Australia about 5,000 years ago by the Aborigines. This female dingo comes in for a feed after breakfast nearly every day. A male dingo with an injured leg ventures in close to the motel. His hunger is probably greater than his natural caution. The dingo is now found throughout the mainland and has a price on its head in most states because of its sheep-killing tendencies. Here it is allowed to roam free, as it is part of the natural scene around Ayers Rock. How big is Ayers Rock compared to a man? Asked David Teakle. This will give you some idea. The summit rises 300 metres above the surrounding desert, and it is about 8 kilometres around its base. The summit can be reached by climbing the rock at the western extremity.
In the past 14 years, 4 people have died climbing Ayers Rock. And to find out just why people do climb Ayers Rock, we're going to go up onto the rock here and ask them as they're climbing up and climbing down.
It has been estimated that 30,000 people made the climb to the top of Ayers Rock last year. People of all ages attempt the climb, from young children up to the oldest recorded climber, a 90-year-old man.
Stay by the chain. Just say, excuse me, go through.
What's making you climb the rock?
I don't know. Because I want to. Just to see if we can do it.
Just to see if we can do it.
We didn't think I'd do Kings Canyon. I reckon that was a trial run, so I'm starting on this one.
Good luck.
Had to beat the challenge.
I'll just have a look round.
I don't know, just the challenge of doing it and making it. That's all. I don't know.
Why? I really can't say. Everybody else does it. When coming along the road after that first, or rather the last stretch of dirt, you know, I thought, well, is it worth it? But when you get up there, it's worth it. Really worth it.
I just had to. Everyone else did, I had to.
It's the thing to do, I guess. Oh, I wanted to come up and have a look at it. I've never seen a desert before, so I figured this was a good place to have a look at one from.
With 70,000 visitors a year, it is up to us all to preserve this unique area. Uluru, the rock, has remained unchanged since the Dreamtime, under its original protectors, the Aborigines.
Every Aborigine owes allegiance to one or other of the Dreamtime ancestors, and it's incumbent upon the Aborigines to attend at the rituals and carry out their part in the performance of the rituals so as to ensure that the ancestor of their ritual is happy, contented, and continues to exist as of use for the human being. In other words, this is pure conservation, pure ecology, the interrelationship of plant, animal, and the human being.
Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leyland brothers. Whatever it is that you want to see, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. No matter whatever that happens to be, ask the Leyland brothers. Come on, me in and then join in the fun. Travel all over Australia.